All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rosh Chodesh Wings and Beer Night. It is Wings and Beer Plus. Plus this evening, there's fries, there's onion rings, there's chili. So there's probably leftovers in the fridge, Rabbi, if you're going help yourself. Beautiful, Baruch Hashem, just beautiful. And all sponsored this evening by our sponsor for the Wednesday Daf Wings and Beer, and for the month of Nisan by Jeffrey and Chava Bela Wald, Ilu Nishmas Jeff's father, Mr. Roman Wald, Avram ben Shmuel, Zichron Levracha, and grandfather, Mr. Menachem Eisner, Menachem Mendel ben Mordechai, Zichron Levracha. May their neshamos have an aliyah. Thank you so much for this. This is beautiful. Pleasure. And encourages us all. I know I wouldn't have come if it wasn't for the Wings and Beer, right? So it's beautiful. Okay, we are on the bottom of Samach Beis and Aleph. 62B, what? 62B2? Two? No,
three.
62B3? 62A3, sorry, A3, sorry, A, yep. You're in the right place. Okay, Tana Rabbanan Rabbis learned. We're talking about waving of the korbanos, right? What's the process of the waving? So, Zivchei Shalmei Tzibor, when it comes to the korban, the shlomim of a community offering, so, like, for example, the Shavuos offering that's coming up, the two sheep that are brought on Shavuos. So te'unin tenufa, they have to be waved li'achar shchita, after the slaughtering is done, right? So of course we already learned that they had to be waved before. We had this discussion about whether the bread was on top of them or below them. So they were waved before, then they're slaughtered, and then once they are then cut up, then they are waved again afterwards. There's a waving afterwards. U'tenufasan kemos shehin. And Divrei Rabbi says that the waving after shechita is the same as the waving before, meaning the animal isn't cut up. Just you take the whole animal after shechita and you wave it. The Chacham say no. What you do is you cut the animal up into its parts. You remove the intestines and the diaphragm and the liver and all those things that have to get burned on the mizbeach, and then you take the chazah and the shok, which is the chest and the right leg, which is the parts that are given to the kohen. And that's the part that's waved. So just this roast and the leg, right? Those pieces are the pieces that are waved. So b'mai kamifni, what is the argument based on? So Amri Rav Chisda Rav Hamnuna. Rav Chisda says to Rav Hamnuna, Amri lo Rav Hamnuna lo Rav Chisda. And some said it was the other way around. As Rav Hamnuna said to Rav Chisda, Bidun mina v'oki be'asra kamifligi. This is an old argument where you have a law that is taught from place number one. Do you transfer everything about that law, or do you only transfer that specific item that's being taught? Here's our example. Rabbanan Savri don mino. The Rabbanan say that how do I know that the animal is supposed to be waved? And so the answer is because a shlomim of an individual also is waved. So therefore, since I know that the waving, I have to wave this korban shlomim of the tzibor from the fact that I have to wave the individual one, the method of waving is also the same. So the method of waving for the individual we had learned was just the portions that have to be given to the kohen. So too, the portions that are given to the kohen are the only part that's waved by the tzibor. Just like the individual's korban shlamim is waved after it is slaughtered. So too, the community's offering is waved after it is slaughtered. Umina, and then I go one step further. Just like the individual offering is waved just with those component parts, the chest and the leg. So too, the community one is waved in the same way. The Rabbi says, no, that's not how the drush works. Don minov oki ba'asra. Just learn the specific thing that you're learning from and don't go any further from it. So what's the law? We're going to say that just as the individual offering needs to be waved after the slaughtering, so too, that's the case by the korban tzibor. The community one also needs to be waved after shchita. But that's it. Just leave that there. So hasamhu dechazav shok. There, when you wave it, you're going to wave it with the component, those parts. But here it doesn't tell us that. So therefore, kemoshein, you leave it the way that it is. You just wave it as is. So kemoshein b'chayim, just as it was in its full form, as it was when it was alive. Rav Papa disagrees with that, and he says, I have a different explanation of their argument. Rav Papa Amar dekuliyama don mino minohu. Everyone agrees that if you're going to learn that you have to wave it, you're going to learn the method of waving from the original source, and you'd be learning it that you'd have to wave with the chaza and the shok, with the chest and the leg. V'hainu taimid de Rabbi. But here's why Rabbi holds, right? Ki hasam. Rabbi says it's just like over there. Ma'asam davar shema tanul kohen. So just like by the individual, it's the part. The question is, what are we learning from over there? Right? For sure, you got to wave, and you're going to learn the style of waving from over there. But the question is, what are you learning from over there? From the individual, you're going to wave the parts that are given to the kohen. So avhacha hu here also davar shematan l'kohen. You're going to give the part that's given to the kohen. Now, in an individual's offering, right? You're going to give just the chest and the leg to the kohen, and the rest is eaten by the owner. But when it comes to the community offering, the entire animal, all the meat is given to the Kohanim. Therefore, just like you wave the Kohen's portions over there, you're going to wave the entire animal here because the entire animal is given to the Kohen. So you are learning it from over there. It's just a question of what are you learning from over there. Ravina says, here's a third explanation. No, Dekuliyama don minov oki basra. No, they all agree that you're only going to learn that you're supposed to wave it. The style of a waving, you're not going to learn from the original source. So what is the reason why the rabbis are going to hold that you're supposed to wave the chazah and the shok? Just wave the chest and the leg. Why shouldn't you wave the entire animal if you're not learning it from the individual offering? Minor time of the rabbanon. Here's why the reason. Because the pasuk says shal mehem. There's an extra word. Normally you wouldn't learn it over from the other place, but here there's a specific word that tells me that you're supposed to wave the shlamim. So, ribuyahu, that's an extra word to tell me that it gets waved in the way that you wave other shlamim. So normally that's not the case, but here it is the case.
Why this extra word we don't use the S?
Bill, there is no word. Is the word v'es here?
No.
No, mizivchei shal mehem. It just says shal mehem. It doesn't say es.
Because the S means it was an extra.
Is also, but here we're going to relate it to shal mehem. We're going to relate it to the shlamim from the fact that it is shlamim, so therefore we're going to wave it just like we wave other shlamims. Mm-hmm. Okay, Mishnah says, back to the Mishnah. Mishnah says, Rabbi Shimon says, Shlosha minin tu'unin shalosh mitzvos. There are 3 different korbanos that have 3 mitzvos. Shtayim b'chol achas. There were 2 out of the 3 mitzvos apply to each of them. Ushlish is same time, but the third one doesn't apply. So it's going to be 3 things, right? And the ve'eluhein, here was the list of 3. Zivchei shalmei yachid, the individual shlamim. Zivchei shalmei tzibor, the community shlamim. Ve'asha mitzorah, and the guilt offering of the mitzorah. So here's how it works. Zivchei shalmei yachid, the individual's shlamim, tu'unin smicha chayim utnufa shchutin. It's going to require 2 things. It requires smicha, that means that the owner leans on it, and then it requires a second thing, it needs to be waved after it's slaughtered. But there's no waving while it's alive. You don't wave that offering while it's alive. Zivchei shalmei tzibor, the korban of the community, which 2 does it have? Tunin tenufa chayim, it needs to be waved while it's alive, ushchutin, and while it's dead. But ve'ein behen smicha, there's no waving. So, I'm sorry, there's no leaning. There's no leaning. So 2 out of the 3.
How could you wave? How could you wave the animal while it's alive?
It's not a big animal, right? We're talking about a sheep.
Oh, we're talking about a sheep.
Yeah, sheep can be lifted up.
I thought we were talking about a cow.
Yeah, no, bulls are. You're right. I hear it. Bulls are a lot more harder to wave, right?
Okay.
These are sheep. Yeah. Asha mitzora, a mitzora one to on smicha utnufa chai. It needs to be leaned on, and it needs to be waved while it's alive. Ve'inbo tenufa shachut, but it does not get waved after it is already slaughtered, after it died. Okay, so now let's explain why each of these is the true. So if we use zivchei shalmei yachid tunin tenufa chayim mikal v'chomer, we said that the individual shlamim only gets waved after it's slaughtered. Why don't we say a kal v'chomer? Why don't we say that it should get also waved while it's alive? Because ma zivchei shalmei tzibor. If we're going to take a look and we're going to say the community shlamim shein tunin tzmicha doesn't need to be leaned on. Chayim while it's alive, tunin tenufa chayim still needs to be waved while it's alive. Therefore, zivchei shalmei yachid, an individual's offering shetunin smicha chayim, which needs to be leaned on, enodin shetunin tenufa chayim for sure should need to be waved while it's alive. So the answer is you're right, but mi'at rachmana gabe zivchei shalmei tzibor, the Torah goes out of its way and mentions an extra word by the individual's shlamim offering, osam. It, that one. Osam, lemut zivchei shalmei yachid. Just osam, that means that this rule does not apply to the individual shlamim. So therefore the pasuk, you're right, it would be a kal v'chomer, but the pasuk tells us not to learn that. Now let's go to the next one. Why don't we say that the shlamim of the community, which we have to wave twice, But there's no smicha. Why not? Why don't we say we need smicha? If the individual offering needs smicha she'ein tunin tenufa, but it doesn't chayim tunim smicha, it does not need to be waived while it's alive, and yet it needs to be leaned on. So zivchei shal mitzibur, the community one, shetunin tenufa chayim, which does need to be waived while it's alive, for sure it should require to be leaned on, right? So Amar Ravina says, Gmire shtei smichos betzibur. It's a halacha l'mosh v'sinai. That's it. There's only 2 times that smicha happens by community offerings. Par helam davar shel tzibur, that we talked about in Horius, and Seir HaMishtaleach by Yom Kippur. That's the goat that gets sent over the cliff on Yom Kippur. That's the other one that they lean on. Otherwise, there's no leaning on the animals by any korban tzibur. So therefore, and where did we learn that from? We don't know. That's halacha l'mosh v'sinai. That's just tradition. We know that. So therefore, since that's the tradition, we know that that's not the case.
Now this is the table we were speaking about yesterday.
Sorry?
You turn the page?
Yes, that's the table that we were talking about yesterday, right? Summarizes the whole bit. Why don't we say that the guilt offering of the person who has tzaras, it should need to be waived after it's slaughtered? We said it only needs to be waived while it's alive, and it needs to be leaned on. It should need to be waived after it's slaughtered, mikal v'chomer, from a kal v'chomer. Maziv cheshalmi yochid. If I'm going to take a look at the individual shlamim, she'ein tonin tenufa chayim, tenufa te'unin, tenufa shchutin, it doesn't need to be waived while it's alive, but it still needs to be waived after it's slaughtered. So asham mitzor shton tenufa chay. Then an asham, a guilt offering, which needs to be waived while it's alive, din te'un tenufa shachet, for sure it should require to be slaughtered after it's slaughtered. So the answer is, again, there's an extra word in the pasuk. Mi'at rachmana, the pasuk goes out of its way. Gavi zivchei shalmi yachid, by an individual's shlamim oso, it says oso. Lim'utei asham mitzor, to tell us that is not the case by an asham mitzora. Okay, good. So we know that that's the rule. Tana Rabban and Rabbi Zurn. Chamisha sheheviu korban echad. Okay, let's say 5 people get together, and they are going to bring a korban as a partnership. They're going to bring korban shlamim. Partners get together. Everyone chip in. I don't know how much a korban costs. It costs $100. Everybody chips in $20 for the korban.
No, I'll give you 25.
Okay. Echad meinif al yedei kulam. So one of the partners is going to waive on behalf of the whole group. V'ha isha, and when it comes to a woman who brings a korban shlamim, Kohen meinif al yadah. Kohen takes care of it for her, right? The women do not go into the courtyard area, so they're not going to waive.
We talked about yesterday.
As we said yesterday, v'chein hasholeach korbanos mivinisi. So too, you could do mail order korbanos. You could do
say mail order.
Mail order, yeah. Right. I don't know what they do mail order anymore.
M-A-E-L or M-A-I?
Actually, it's a shlamim, could be male or female, right? So it doesn't have to be. But it is.
Is it express shipping or?
So you could do it you could do remotely, basically, right? You can go on and make your order, make your Amazon order or whatever for your korban, and they get it, right? Emailed to the Beis HaMikdash. So the Beis HaMikdash is bringing your korban for you. Do e-transfer and you're good, right? You don't need to be there.
What's the shipping fee?
But if you're not there, who's doing the waving? So Kohen, meaning if the Kohen takes care of it for you. Kohen can do the waving for you. Okay. Says the next Mishnah.
That's it. Sorry, when the coin is bringing the korban for a woman,
Yes.
the coin goes out to the.
No, the animal gets sent in on her behalf, right? She doesn't even have to be present. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, the animal has to get there somehow. The Kohen himself could schlep it, right?
Did you send a shliach at all?
We're going to see that the animals get stored in a chamber, which is not in here, which is in the wrong place here. The model should be further over there, but in that chamber they have a pen with animals and things, although there's only 6 of them.
Are they chained?
I would imagine so. Right? There's a pen. They're probably not chained. They're just they're closed, right?
Right.
Okay, so says the Mishnah. Ha'omer, somebody says, Harei alai b'machvas. Now, the machvas offering is interested in this week's parsha, right? So there's good, a lot of stuff in this week's parsha, right? Pan-fried offering. So if somebody says, I'm going to donate a pan-fried offering, lo yavi b'marcheshes, don't bring it in the deep-fried pan, right? B'marcheshes, if he says he's going to bring the deep-fried pan, lo yavi b'machvas, don't bring the flat pan. If you do, you're not finished. You got to bring it again, right?
Can you bring it in a wok?
You cannot. You have to bring according to the procedures as specified. Ma bein machvas lemarcheshes. What is the difference between a machvas and a marcheshes? A marcheshes yesh bo kisui. The marcheshes has a cover on it. There's a lid on the pot, right? So it's put in the oil and then it's a lid. Machvas ein la kisui. The machvas is just a pan. It has no lid, and so therefore it comes out crispier. Okay, Diver Rabbi Yossi Glili. That's how Rabbi Yossi Glili learns it. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel says, "Marcheshes amuka." The marcheshes is a deep pan. Umaseha rochshin, and it bubbles. It makes, it's creep. Literally, it means rochshin. It creeps. It's because it's dough. It's not a stew.
It's sizzled.
It's like a donut. If you've ever dropped a donut into the
Rabbi, it sizzled.
it sizzles. That's right. That's a good word. Machvas, but the pan tsafa, it floats on top, right? Because it's just the layer of oil, and you're putting it on top. Umaseh kashin, so it comes out like a cracker, right? Basically, fried bread versus deep fried donut bread, right? That's how it's going to come.
Like a crouton's fried bread. Crouton's fried bread, isn't it?
So that would be my crispy, right? So therefore, that's going to be the difference in your textures between the breads. Says the Gemara, my time of the Rabbi Yossi. Where does Rabbi Yossi get his rule from that it's supposed to have a lid on it? So he says, "Ilema marcheshes de osya aruchushe leiv." Why would you bring a marcheshes? What makes a difference? Why would somebody decide to bring a marcheshes versus a machvas? So he says, a marcheshes is brought if somebody has an avera in their heart. They think about doing the wrong thing. They don't actually have to do it, but they think, I have a bad idea. I regret my bad idea. So he wants to bring a marcheshes. So your heart is covered, so you bring it in a covered pan, right? Everything is symbolic. Kidduch siv, as the pasuk says, rachash libi davar tov. My heart is sizzled through to some good thing, right? And machvas, the frying pan, is de'asya amachbui hapeh. That comes because you speak badly, right? Somebody says lashon hara or speaks poorly or negatively or something like that. Correct. Then you would bring your machvas offering. Kedam riinchi, like people say, medabach nabuchi. People have this phrase that they say that it's the air that flows from the and the word comes from the word machvas. Nebuche, that flows from the mouth, right? The speech that comes out of the mouth. So if that's his proof, I would say ima ipcha. I could say it the reverse because machvas, maybe the machvas is de'asya machbui halev could come from the covered part of the heart. Because the pasuk says loma nachbeisa livroach. The word machvas could come from the word nachbeisa, which means to hide. Lavan chases Yaakov down when he's running away in Parshas Vayetze, and he says, "Why'd you try to sneak away in the middle of the night?" Lama nachbeisa levroach, so nachbeisa machvas, right, to hide. So maybe that means the one that has a cover on it. Umarcheshes, and then the marcheshes to osya arechushe, and marcheshes comes for the whispering, I guess the sizzling, the deep fry. Sizzling sounds like whispering. Kadamriinchi hava marachshan sif sosei. His lips were whispering, so therefore maybe that's why you bring the deep fried pan for the whispers. Ella, the answer is gemara gemirele. That's to say a tradition that they had, that one had a lid on it and one did not. That's it. Just out of credit. There's not from Sukkim. He could have it from Sukkim to help him remember it, but there's no. It's just a Gemara. It's just a tradition they had.
Just as an aside, the incident with Korah, weren't they holding pans or something?
They did for burning ketoras, right? They did. They brought ketoras fire pans.
I see.
Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel says that a marcheshes is a deep pan and machvas is a flat pan. Marcheshes amuka. How do I know marcheshes is deep? Dichsiv, because the pasuk next week's parsha says v'chol naaseh b'marcheshes. Everything is made in a marcheshes. That means there's an inside to a marcheshes. And machvas tsafa, and the machas is just flat. Dichsiv, the pasuk says ve'al machvas, and it's made on the pan. In versus on. In means it's deep. On means it's a flat pan. Okay, Tanar Rabbanan Rabbis with Beishamai Omrim. Beishamai says ha'omer harei marcheshes. If somebody says I'm going to bring a marcheshes, so he doesn't say ba marcheshes. He doesn't say I'm going to bring an offering that's in a marcheshes. He just says I'm going to bring a marcheshes. Now what happens? Does he mean the offering or does he mean the actual pan? He's donating a pan. So what does he mean? So Yehemunach ad sheyav Eliyahu. We don't know what to do. He's got to write it down. He's got to wait till Eliyahu Hanavi comes, and we'll ask Eliyahu Hanavi what the halacha is. We don't know. Mistap galahu al shum kli nikra'u. We don't know whether he was actually donating the pan itself, the deep pan, al shum ma'aseyum, or whether he was donating the offering that's brought in that pan. It's not clear from what he said. Beis Hillel say, no, that's not on my Ask Eliyahu Hanavi list. We've got a long list already. I already know. Kli hayab mikdash marcheshes shma. There was a utensil. It was called a marcheshes. So if he says, I'm donating a marcheshes, he means the pan. That's what he said. That's what he means. And what did it look like? V'doma kamin kalbus amuk. It looked like a deep tongs. How so? So Art Scroll has this picture that looks like a 6-shooter, right?
Yeah.
This picture, right? The 6-shooter.
Yeah.
Well, that's on the bottom. In the Rashi here, he's got a 6-shooter. But right. But Art Scroll he corrects that seems to be an error in the picture. That really what he means is it's supposed to look like tongs, and that's where Rashi describes it looks like the picture that you've got on the bottom there. It's like a U-shaped pan that has the ends on it, but it goes in. And ukeshebotzek munach besocho, when the dough. Yeah, but what do you have? I'm just curious. What does your Gemara look like?
Yeah, it has the circle.
Same thing, right? So always this is the Mesifta always makes the correction. I've got the U shape, right? They change it in the Rashi. They won't leave enough alone, right? They got to fix everything here.
I was saying it's reminiscent of like the molds they do at orthodontists.
Yes, that's what it's exactly like. Yes.
True.
Yes. Yeah.
Why would they put it like it's such your 8-shooter inside the Gemara?
Yes, because that's the way they say the pan looks like. But I think they say it's. I think in the art school notes they comment that it is a error. It seems to be an error in the picture that's in our Rashis. So, batek munach besocha, when the dough is in it, doma kimin tapuche ha-bresim. It looks like apples from bresim, and kimin balute ha-yevonim, and balute from yevonim, which is supposed to help us, but I don't know what those look like. So that's why I guess it must have had like some indentations on the bottom of the pan. It looks like it's in the picture, and it looks like the dough has protrusions in that way. The Omer. Okay, now an extra proof that Beis Hillel says, "V'chol naaseh b'marcheshes v'al machvas." The pasuk says anything that's made in a marcheshes or on a machvas. Alma al shum hakelim nikru v'al shum mas v'lo al shum maasehem. So that is to say that that's when you said that's the utensils are called the marcheshes and the machvas. So that's what he means to say, not the things that are done inside of them, because he meant. To talk about the korban that was inside of it, he would have said, "I'm bringing that which goes in the marcheshes, not I'm bringing on or I'm bringing the marcheshes." Next Mishnah, that was quick. Next Mishnah, Harei alai betanur. Somebody says, "I'm going to bring an oven-baked offering." Oven-baked offerings are in this week's parsha. We're back to this week's parsha. Yavi ma'afeh. So he has to bring something that is baked in a. So lo yavi ma'afeh kupach. He cannot use a kupach. What's a kupach? A kupach was a mini oven. Right?
Mini oven?
A mini oven. They are ovens like were like conical. Yeah, like their version of a toaster oven, right? A regular oven can get very hot. They build up the fire on the inside. It gets narrow on the top. This oven, smaller version, doesn't get as hot. Yeah, so don't use the kupach. That's not okay. Velo ma'afeh re'ofim, and don't bring a re'ofim, heating tiles, right? They would heat up tiles on a fire, and then they would bake something on the tiles. That's not good enough either, and that's not baking, right? And also. Velo ma'afeh yoros ha'aravim. Don't bring from the Arabian pots. The Arabian pots is also not baking in the same kind of a way. That's not the way to do it. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Rotzamevi ma'afeh kupach." The kupach is okay. The small toaster oven is okay. Harei alai minchas ma'afeh. Somebody says, "I'm going to bring a mincha that's baked." Lo yavi mechza chalos mechza rikikin. There are two types in the parsha of this week. It says you've got a choice. You can bring this baked offering from chalos. Now remember, they're all matzah, so they're not chametz, right? But chalos, which are like a puffy dough, and rakikin, wafers. Those are your choices. But you can't bring half and half. You got to bring 10 chalos or 10 rakikin. That's your choices. Rabbi Shimon matir mipnei shein korban echad. Rabbi Shimon says, no, it's all one korban. So you can mix and match. It's all up to one because it's called the mincha of the oven, so you can mix and match the two types. Says the Gemara, Tanur Rabban Rabbi Mafet Tanur. Pasuk says v'chisa kriv korban mincha, when you bring a korban mafet tanur, which is baked in an oven. That's in this week's parsha, Perak Beis, pasuk Dalid. V'lo mafet kupach. That's an oven, not a kupach, not the small oven. V'lo mafet ra'ifim, and ra'afim, not tiles. V'lo mafet yoros ha'arvim, and not the Arabian pots. Rabbi Yehuda,
like a wooden oven.
Not a wooden oven. Wooden ovens are not very useful, I would say.
No.
Right? They only are usable once. Yeah. So, Rabbi Yehuda says, tanur, it has to be a tanur shnei pamim, but then it says tanur a second time. Why would you say tanur a second time? Lahach shir mafeh kufach. It comes to expand and say not just ovens, but also something that's close to an oven. They're small ovens.
Because sometimes when you have this brick oven,
brick ovens are right, exactly, yes.
We throw wood inside, and
that would seem that's a tanur. That's correct.
That's what I meant.
That's right. Yes. Well, that's how most of their ovens were heated up with wood, right? Dried out wood. That's how they would normally do.
How some places make their pizza.
That's correct. That's what we're talking. That's the oven. That's what we're trying to do.
That's what I meant to say when I said wooden oven.
Then you're on track. Rabbi Shimon says tanur shnei pamim. Rabbi Shimon says no, it's the other way. It says tanur twice. Echad shetei afiyas betanur means one time it has to be baked in an oven. Ve'echad shetei hekdeshan betanur. And second of all, that once you place it into the oven to bake, that's when it becomes sanctified. Right, and once the offering becomes sanctified, then of course all of the rules of a korban apply to it. Can't leave the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash anymore. It can't become tummy anymore. That's when it becomes sanctified at the baking. Umi is Leila Rabbi Shimon Haisvar. Does Rabbi Shimon hold that once you put it into the oven, it becomes sanctified? Because remember, we haven't broken it up yet. And we haven't taken a kamitza on it yet. You're saying just as soon as you bake it, it's now sanctified? That's not. We're in a mission. Rabbi Shimon says, "Liolam having ragil lomar shtei halechem velechem aponim ksheros ba'azaru ksheros bebeis pagi." Right? We would say that the 2 loaves of bread that were brought on Shavuos and the lechem aponim, they were baked, but they were not sanctified until they were placed on the table, lechem aponim. And the shtei halechem are not sanctified until you slaughter the sheep that go with them. So they're fine. Wherever they are, they're fine if they're in the courtyard. They're fine if they're far away in this place called Beis Pagi, which is outside of the Azar. You can put it, not far away, but it's one of the side chambers in the Beis Hamikdash. You can bring it there. It's outside of the Azar. It doesn't matter because they're not sanctified yet. But why are they not sanctified yet? They're baked already. Once they're baked, according to Rabbi Shimon, they should be sanctified. So Rava says, Ema shehekdeshin l'shum taner. It means that when you sanctify them, when you sanctify the flour and you donate the flour as sanctified to the Beis Hamikdash for the Beis Hamikdash use, so they'll have a sanctification on the monetary level, not on the physical level. That monetary sanctification needs to be sanctified for the sake of an oven offering. That's what I mean. I'm going to have to be able to say this flour is being donated for the sake of an oven offering. If you donate this flour for the sake of a pan-fried offering, you can't now switch it over and turn it into the oven offering. It's got to be donated for that sake. So minchas ma'afeh lo yavi mechza. So the next thing is the Mishnah says, if a person says I'm supposed to bring an oven-baked offering, you got to bring all 10 chalos or all 10 wafers. You cannot bring a mixture, and Rabbi Shimon says, yes, you can. You can mix and match. Tana Rabban and rabbis learned, because the pasuk says, v'chisa kriv, when you want to, and the rest of the pasuk says, korban mincha ma'afet tenor, when you are going to bring a korban mincha, which is baked in an oven, so the pasuk says, keshetakriv lasos davar rishus korban mincha, right? When you are going to bring it as an offering, which is an offering of your own donation, so bring this korban mincha. You've got a choice. Bring the chalos, bring the rekikin. Those are your choices. So, Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, Minayin la'omer harei alai mincha mafa. What if a person says, I want to bring an oven-baked offering, shelo yavi mechza chalos mechza rekikin, he cannot bring half and half. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, korban mincha. You must bring the mincha offering, the flour offering. So that means, korban echad amarti lecha v'lo shnayim ushlosha korbanos. You have to bring one korban. You said you're going to bring a korban, bring the one. Don't bring pieces of this one or pieces of that one. Don't bring this way or that. Bring one solid thing. Just bring the one thing that you said. Right? No shlesim. Amar lo Rabbi Shimon says, it doesn't say you have to bring a korban twice. So it means that you have to bring one korban. Namar bo chalos urikikin. So one korban is whatever you bring, is that one korban. It can be a mixture, but that's also one korban. That's how you interpret the pasuk. Bring one korban. It could be a mixture of chalos and rikikim, but it's all one korban. So me'ata rotzel havi chalos, maybe. That means that if you decide you want to bring chalos, go ahead. Rikikin, if you want to bring wafers, go ahead. Mechza chalos and mechza rikikin. You want to bring half and half? Maybe. Go ahead. Bolilon. So all you got to do is if you're bringing a mixture, you break them up into pieces, right? And now you mix the whole thing up. The komitz mishneim, you take the kamitza from the mixture. Now, ve'im kamatz ve'ola biyado me'echad al shnehem, if it happens to be that the kamitza that you take, it's not mixed thoroughly well, and you take a kamitza and all you get are chalos and you don't get any of the rekikin, yeah, so that's fine. Because it's all mixed together, it's all one offering anyway. That's what it's telling me. Once you bring it all together in the bowl, it's all one offering. You don't say, hey, this is chalos, I need a representation of the chalos and I need a representation of the rekikin. No, you don't. It's all one offering now. So once you mix it up, just scoop up a piece and you're fine. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says, Minayin la'omar harei alai minchas mafeh. If a person says, I'm going to bring a oven-baked offering, shelo yavi mechza chalos mechza rekik, and Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says, now this is Rabbi Yehuda, it was a machlok, is an argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Now Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda comes along. Rabbi Yossi, who's Rabbi Yehuda's son, comes along, and he's going to agree with his father, but he's going to have a different proof. Okay? We're going to see it's a little bit different. He has a slightly different approach. He says that, how do I know that if I say I'm going to bring an oven baked offering, I can't bring half and half? Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, "V'chol mincha asher ta'afeh betanur." All mincha, the entire mincha that you are going to bake in the oven, v'chol naaseh b'marcheshes, and another offering that you could bring is an offering that's brought in the marcheshes, in the deep pan, v'amachvas, or the flat pan. La kohen hamakrivo so lo siyeh. It gets given as a gift. What happens after you do the kmitza? You bring the kmitza. The rest of it gets given as a gift to the kohen to consume. V'chol mincha belula b'shemen. That means all mincha can be mixed together with oil. V'chareva, and also the dry offering of mincha. So we have offerings that have no oil in them. L'chol b'nei Aaron tiyeh. They also go to Aaron. My vichol ha'omer lemata. So just like the vichol, which is at the end of the pasuk, which is talking about the marcheshes and the machvas, and also it's talking about the one that's mixed with oil and the one that's not. Shnei minin chalukin. Those are two types. Flat pan offering and the deep pan. Those are two completely different types of offerings. So af vichol ha'omer lemata. Also above in the first part of the pasuk, when it says you're going to bring from chalos and rikikin, both baked in an oven. So shnei minin and chalukin, those are two different types. They're completely different types of offerings. You can't mix and match. That's his proof. Now, for Rabbi Yehuda, shaper kam Rabbi Shimon. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, one second. Rabbi Shimon has a good answer to Rabbi Yehuda, right? So Rabbi Shimon said, what are you talking about? It says one korban. Mix and match. It's one korban. That's a good answer. So Amar Lach, he'll say to you, kevan dichsiv bashemen bashemen. Keman dichsiv korban korban dami. He says, no, it says bashemen twice in the pasuk, right? You're supposed to mix together it with these chalos and the rakikin in oil, and it says it twice. That's as though it says each one is a separate korban. It doesn't say korban twice, but it does say bashemen. So it's like the shemen is like a comma to tell me chalos bashemen, rakikin bashemen, they're separate. They're not the same thing. Rabbi Shimon, how does Rabbi Shimon look at that word? Iloksiv bashemen bashemen, if it didn't tell me with oil twice, havina davka mechza chalos mechza rakikin, that would mean I might have thought that you specifically have to bring a mixture of both. Because it says you can bring chalos and rakikin. So bring chalos and rakikin. You have to bring both. Ava chalos l'chudayu, but if I wanted to bring only chalos, or rakikin l'chudayu, or I wanted to bring only wafers, I couldn't do that. So kamash malon, therefore it says the word shemen to tell me I have a choice. I can bring all of one, all of the other, or a mixture of both. Okay, now, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda hainu avua. Doesn't it sound like Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda is agreeing with his father? Which is problematic, because all he should say is, I hold like my father. No, he comes along and says, I also agree that you can only bring one or the other, you can't bring a mixture. Well, why does he have to say that?
Would it be a chutzpah to his father?
Sorry?
Wouldn't it be like a chutzpah?
To argue, right? Well, I mean, I guess it's not chutzpahdik to disagree with your father in Torah. He's probably pretty proud of him. So, Ika beinayu I da'avad, di'avad. The answer is, the question is, they're arguing about, let's say you did it. You're not supposed to, but let's say you did. According to Rabbi Yehuda, so he says the pasuk says it's all one korban. So, okay, in the end of the day, you did it. You brought a korban, so it's fine. But according to Rabbi Yossi, who is his son, he says no. He says from the fact that it says from a dry offering and an oil baked offering and an offering with oil. If I mix and match and I put the wrong one in, I didn't bring the right korban. I have to repeat it. So he says that's the same thing as with when it comes to the rakikin and the chalos. If I bring the wrong one, I have to repeat it. I can't bring the same. I can't. They're not interchangeable. So therefore, if I mess up, I have to bring another one. That is the end of that parak. Now, interesting about this next parak which is the timeliness of the daf. Right, we're going to be talking about the korban ha'omer, which is going to eventually lead to us counting of the omer, which we're coming up to. Right. So
are we doing that tonight, or
we're going to start korban. We're not going to do the counting of the omer. Sorry, yeah, that's the end of the parak and the beginning of the new parak. Right. So that's the end.
End of the chapter.
Right. So now, when we get to the next, Rabbi Shmuel is going to tell us about we're going to learn all about the Korban HaOmer and some history about it. So the Korban HaOmer is so first of all, this, if you're learning Mishnayos, is the 10th parak in Mishnayos. But it's out of order, in the different order in the Gemara. So in the Gemara, it's the 6th parak, which is perfect for us, because if it was the 10th parak, we'd learn it way after Shuas, right? So this is perfect for us. Okay, so we're going to learn it right now. The Korban HaOmer is the offering that's brought on the second day of Pesach. Okay, well, from the Torah, only the first day of Pesach is Yom Tov. The second day is Chol HaMoed. Comes Chol HaMoed, so we're going to bring a korban that day. We're going to learn how it's brought, but essentially, what's special about it is it's the first produce. It's in winter time now, so things are not growing, but things are starting to sprout, and things are the first thing that sprouts up, the fastest growing grain is barley. So it comes up first.
Is there a special korban we give for Chol Hamoed? Because I know you give korban.
There will be musaf offerings for Chol Hamoed. This isn't a musaf offering. See, this is an offering that is brought. It's an argument whether this is an offering that's brought because of the second day of Yom Tov, or whether it's an offering which is related to the Omer and it has its own thing. But okay, in any event, but this offering, right, is then they harvest this barley special for this purpose, and we'll learn the rules of the harvesting of the barley. And then this barley was ground up and it was used for this korban. It is now, after you use this new barley, that's the permitter of using new grain for everybody. So you're not allowed to use grain grown in the year that it's grown in. You have to use produce that's grown from last year's produce. That's called Yashar and Chadash, right? Once you do the Korban Omer, the second day of Pesach, that permits all of the grain from last year from now being used. You open up the storehouses, use last year's grain.
Could that be, could that be
It's a
a problem
permitter.
with Shemitah? Is there
Shemitah, well, it's not a problem with Shemitah.
They're connected?
They're not connected. It's not connected to Shemitah. Obviously, you won't have grain that you can open up if you're in a Shemitah year in the same kind of a way. But that's what the Korban Omer is for. That's what it represents. Okay, and it's a barley mincha offering, and we've already learned about it that it needs to be waved. It needs to be touched to the court, to the mizbeach, all the things we learned. Okay, so now let's get into the details of how this korban was brought. Rabbi Yishmael says, Omer haya ba b'Shabbos. The Korban Omer was even brought. It's an offering that's obligatory on the second day of Pesach. If the second day of Pesach comes out on Shabbos, even though you're going to have to cut the barley and harvest, which is a violation of Shabbos, you're going to grind it, you're going to sift it, all violations of Shabbos. You're going to bake it, all violations of Shabbos. You're allowed to, because that is the obligation, like we always have, right? When we have a musaf offering on Shabbos, it's an animal, you're going to slaughter it, a violation of Shabbos. But you're allowed to do violations of Shabbos in order to do a korban for the day.
I think the second Shabbos will explain the Levitas Malachis, basically.
Yeah, so now, if it comes on Shabbos, though, generally speaking, we'd like, according to Rishmal, to minimize the amount of malacha that you do. So he says, the Omer that comes b'Shabbos, if you're doing the Korban Omer on a Shabbos, let's say that year comes out on a Shabbos, so then mishalosh sa'in, then what you're going to do is you're going to harvest 3 sa'ah of grain. Why do you need 3 sa'ah of grain? Because when you grind it up, you're going to be able to make an isaron. That's the measure of barley that you need, 1 isaron of barley. That's how much barley flour you're going to get out of this collective amount of grain. Ubechol, now, if it's a weekday, mechamesh, then go ahead and harvest 5. Why? Because according to Rabbi Yishmael, when you start to grind it and you start to squeeze, the first part that comes out is the nicest part. So therefore, if you're going to use 5 more raw barley in order to get less flour, so then you're going to wind up with a nicer product. In order to get to the product, in order to get a full isaron out of 3 sa'ah, you've got to grind it more, right? But the advantage is you're going to be doing a lot less malacha because you're going to be harvesting less, you're going to be sifting less, you're going to be threshing less. You're not going to do any of those things, right?
So basically, they want to do one batch on Shabbos.
That's correct. Shabbos, you want to do one batch. Correct. That's right. Less to do. That's exactly right. So the Chachamim omrim, the Chachamim disagree. The Chachamim says Echad Shabbos v'Echad Chol mishalosh. The Chachamim say doesn't matter whether you're going to do it during the Shabbos or during the week. It's going to be just 3. Either way, you're going to wind up. Right, don't make it fancier during the week, right? All you need is 3. Let's do the grinding in 3. And not only that, but the Chacham also say there's no need to diminish on Shabbos. Haya ba Rabbi Chanina, Mishalosh. So ba Rabbi Chanina Sgana Kohanim Omer b'Shabbos Haya Niktar b'Yachid b'Magal Echad u'bekupa Achas. So Rabbi Chanina, the Skana Kohanim, he was actually, seems like he was the Skana Kohen, which is the assistant Kohen, which means that he was probably around during the time of the Beis HaMikdash, maybe even, so he might have witnessed this himself. He says, when it came on Shabbos, they harvested with one person. One person did all the harvesting. One person they would take 1 sickle, 1 basket, and they would just one person would do the whole thing. Bechol, when it was a weekday, Bishlosha, they would have 3 people do it. Bishalosh kupos with 3 baskets, vishalosh magalos, and 3 sides. So the Chachamim said Echad Shabbos v'Echad Chol, whether it was Shabbos or a weekday, b'shlosha kupos b'shlosh magos, you still do it with 3 people with 3 sides. No need to diminish on Shabbos. Okay, so now says the Gemara, Bishlama Rabbanan kasavri isaron muvchar b'shlosha. I understand the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan say, if I'm going to take the Rabbanan are holding, all I need is 3 sa'ah. So I can get a perfectly fine isaron out of 3 sa'ah. It doesn't matter. So during the weekday and on Shabbos, do the same thing. So therefore they say isaron muvchar b'shlosha. I can get a perfectly fine isaron out of 3. So b'shlosha sa'im. Asi. V'loshna b'chol v'loshna b'Shabbos. So it makes no difference. On Shabbos and a weekday, I'm going to do it the same way. Elo Rabbi Yishmael, my kasavar. What is Rabbi Yishmael holding? Ikasavar isaron muvchar lo asi elo mechamesh. If he's saying you need 5 sa'ah in order to get 3 isronos, afilu b'Shabbos nami. So why doesn't he require that on Shabbos too? And imi shalosh asi. So if you're going to be able to get an isaron out of 3, afilu b'chol nami, then why don't you do that during the weekday also? So Amar Rava says kasavar Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael holds isaron muvchar below tircha asi mechamesh. You can get a great isaron without a lot of work coming from 5. So on a weekday, that's the plan. But tircha asi mishalosh. But if you work hard, if you grind it more, then you can get a isaron out of 3. The chol. So therefore, on a weekday, ma'asina mechamesh, we're going to get 5 because that's the easy way. Dehachi shvicha milsa, because that's the nicer way to get it. B'Shabbos, but if it's Shabbos, mutav sheyir b'malacha achas beharkada v'ayar b'malachos harbe. Better to just do the grinding more and not do all the other malachos that are necessary to get to that process, right? You've got to harvest it, then you got to thresh it, then you got to winnow it, then you got to sift it, then you got to sort it. You got all these malachos. Better to do less of all that. Amar Rabbi says, Rabbi Yishmael b'noshe Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, Amru davar echad. It sounds like Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Yishmael, who was the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, 2 different Rabbi Yishmaels, they say the same thing. How so? Dit Tanya Winter Brisa. Arbasar shechalios b'Shabbos. Let's say we have Pesach. We've got a lot of Pesach stuff coming around here. Let's say Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos. Doesn't this year. Erev Pesach falls out on a Shabbos. So you've got a Korban Pesach to bring. But it's Shabbos. But I'm allowed to slaughter my Korban Pesach, even though it's Shabbos, because I have a Korban to bring. But mafshit es ha-Pesach adechazeh. We're going to minimize the work. There's no need to do extra. So when I'm going to skin the animal and I've got to remove the insides, I'm going to cut the hide of the animal only up until the chest cavity so that I can get inside and remove the parts that I have to remove and clean it out. But I don't cut it all the way open because that's extra malacha. No need to do it. So we're just going to do what's necessary. Rabbi Yishmael b'noshe Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, the Chachamim, and Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, div Rabbi Yishmael b'noshe Rabbi Yochanan. That's what Rabbi Yishmael b'noshe Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka is. So that sounds like Rabbi Yishmael in our Mishnah, right? Rabbi Yishmael in our Mishnah says, minimize the, I know you're allowed to do it on Shabbos, but let's minimize. So it sounds like they're saying the same thing. The Chachamim disagree, ad sheyafshiyas kulo, go ahead and slice the skin off the way you normally do. Right? No need to minimize. Milo amar Rabbi Yishmael b'noshe Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka hasam kol hecha de'efshar lo tarchinan. So, isn't that what the point of Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, is? His point is, if you can minimize the Shabbos activity, do that. So hachanami. So here also, by the Korban Omer, kevan de'efshar lo tarchinan. Since it's possible to do it with less work for the Korban Omer, we do that also. Mimai, who says, maybe it's 2 different things. Maybe they're 2 different ways. Because maybe lo kamar Rabbi Yishmael hacha ela deleka bizayin kachim. Maybe the only reason why Rabbi Yishmael holds that by the Omer we're going to cut less is because there's no embarrassment to the sacrifice. However, when it comes to the Korban Pesach, cutting it open only part way isn't the nicest way to do the sacrifice. So he only says we're going to minimize the work if it doesn't have any negative ramifications on the work itself. So he says you can harvest less and you'll still get an Isar and everything's fine. But when it comes to the Korban Pesach, don't minimize that, because if you do that, you're going to not cut open the whole chest cavity and then it's not going to be as nice a Korban. So he would disagree. Aval Hasam Deka Bizayin Kachim, there, when you're going to wind up not sacrificing it as well, so Emalach Kirabanan Sfirli, he would agree with the Rabbanan and say, go ahead and do it the right way. So Samach Dalet Amud Aleph. Inami, or also Ad Kan Lo Kam Rabbi Yishmael b'noshe Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Hasam Ela Diis Ovid Le Tzorech Gavoha V'lo Tzorech Achuli Shabbos. He says, maybe Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher, Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka says, well, you only have to cut it part of the way up because you can accomplish both tasks, right? You could wind up taking care of the korban and not being Mechal Shabbos, so that's fine. But here, Delo is Ovid le Tzorech Gavoa v'Tzorech lechule Shabbos ima karabanan svirale. However, here by the korban haomer, right? It's not a korban. It's not a korban. So therefore, I'm going to be Mechal Shabbos. So he's going to say, so therefore, it's not going to be enough to satisfy the requirement with only 3 sa'ah. So therefore, go ahead and cut it all the way. He holds like the Rabbanan, cut as much as you need, right? It's not going to be, so therefore, the point is that their argument isn't, the two cases are not similar enough. A korban is different than everything else, so therefore, you can't relate the two together. El Amar Rabba, so Rabba's going to say, let's try again. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Chanina, Skana Kohanim, Amru Davar Echad. Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Chanina, the assistant to the Kohanim, they said the same thing. It's not because our Mishnah said that Rabbi Chanina, Skana Kohanim, or Rabbi Chanina, the Skana Kohanim, said in our Mishnah we just read, B'Shabbos Niktzar B'Yachid B'Magal Echad B'Kupa Achas. That on Shabbos, when you're going to cut the korban omer, you're going to use one person, one scythe, one basket. Just one person. Ubechol, but during the week, b'shlosha, b'shalosh b'kupos, ub'shalosh magos, you use 3 people, 3 baskets, and 3 scythes. V'chomer mechad b'shabbos v'echad chol, b'shalosh kupos v'shalosh magolos. So, but Chachamim say you're going to use 3 no matter what. So, mi lo kamer Rabbi Chanina skana kohem hosem kevan de'efshar lo tarchinon, sachenami kevan de'efshar lo tarchinon. Isn't Rabbi Yoch, what is his point? He says, because it's Shabbos, so minimize the work. Instead of using 3 people, use 1 person. It's better 1 person should do it. So it sounds like he's agreeing with Rabbi Yishmael. Mimai, maybe those 2 cases are different. Dilma ad kan lo kam Rabbi Yishmael, hocha ela deleka persume milsa. Look, the whole point is Rabbi Yishmael says, well, I'm cutting 3, I'm cutting 5. It makes no difference as far as the advertising goes. Right? It's how much you're cutting, it's how much I'm cutting, doesn't make a difference. Aval hasam, but over there, dika persume milsa, once I get 3 people making a whole procession, I'm trying to make a procession out of this. I will say why in a second. So Imar Rabban, he would agree with the rabbis. The procession is so important that even on Shabbos, I'm going to do it with 3 people anyway. Svira, so Karabban is Svirle. And Inami, or the other way around, Ad kan lo kamer Rabbi Chanina skana kohanim hosam di bechad i b'shlosha tzorach gavoa mis ovid, that he says you can fulfill the purpose whether 1 person is doing it or 3 people. It doesn't make a difference. You're going to cut what you need. Kilchaso. But here, delois ovid kilchaso, if you're going to wind up cutting only 3, you're not going to do it as nicely. So tzorach gavoha, you need to do it, and so you're going to cut it. So now, what was the whole point of this procession? So the story goes like this, and this is what the Gemara is going to get into in a moment. Antigonus Ish Socho from Pirkei Avos says that a person should be somebody who serves Hashem not to receive the reward, just to be able to serve for the sake of serving. He had 2 students, Baitus and Tzadok. Baitus and Tzadok heard their Rebbe say this, and they said, what, a Rebbe saying there's no reward for mitzvos? Well, then what's the point? Now, there's an animamin, right? One of the animamins is that we believe that Hashem gives a reward and punishment for everything, right? So that's not true. But they heard, Antigonus heard the Rabbi say there's no reward. There's no reason to do the mitzvahs because there's no reward. So they went off the derech. They said, we're not going to keep this Torah anymore. The only problem is they knew that Torah was very popular at the time. You can't just go off the derech like that. So they said, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep the written Torah, but we're not going to keep the oral Torah. That gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility. The Baitus had his followers called the Baitusim, and Tzadok has his followers called the Tzedukim. And those, the Tzedukim and the Baitusim, were keeping the written laws, but they were not keeping the oral traditions. They were making their own oral versions up. And one of the things they said is that it says in the Parsha about the Korban HaOmer is that it's supposed to be brought Mimacharas HaShabbos, the day after Shabbos. Okay? Now, what does Mimacharas HaShabbos mean? So they took a look inside. Mimacharas HaShabbos means the day after Shabbos. The Chum say, no, we have a tradition. Mimacharas HaShabbos means Shabbos can also mean Yom Tov. Right. So you're supposed to do the Korban HaOmer the day after Yom Tov, meaning the 2nd day of Pesach. Says the Baitusim and the Tzedukim said, no, it's always a Sunday. So whenever Pesach ends, whatever the first day of Pesach, this year the first day of Pesach is Thursday. Yeah. So we're going to wait till Shabbos, and then Sunday is going to be the first day. You're always going to start counting the Omer and bringing the Korban HaOmer on a Sunday. Well, that creates big problems. Shavuos is going to come out on the wrong day, right? Aside from the Korban HaOmer being brought wrong, it's going to. So therefore, they had the Chachamim said that we are going to demonstrate that we're right. And they said, since this was a famous disagreement between the Tzedukim and the Chachamim, they said, we're going to make a public demonstration. That's the same reason they had the same argument. They had a similar argument about the Paraduma, and that's why we said the Tvul Yom is going to bring the Paraduma. The Chachamim wanted to make a public demonstration of the fact that Tzedukim and the Baitusim were wrong. So therefore, they made a major demonstration out of the Korban HaOmer in order to demonstrate we're bringing the Korban HaOmer. And they made a whole thing out of it. We'll see later on that they gathered everybody all around, and they had a whole, like a cheering squad and everything going on. And they got 3 people to do the cutting, where one person would have sufficed. But one person, it was a Shabbos, okay, we do one person. Says the Rabbi Yishmael would say, no, I don't agree. Even for that, the procession was very important. So you can't limit that on Shabbos. Even on Shabbos, we're going to have 3 people doing it. That's why the procession was so important. So, Ema Karabonan Svira Lei. So let's say, Ella Amar Rav Ashi. Ella Amar Rav Ashi, Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi Amru Davar Echad. Let's try another one. Maybe Rav Ashi says that maybe Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Yossi said the same thing. Ditznan, we learn a Mishnah. When it comes to Rosh Chodesh, so you see the moon, right? In the old days, they would see the moon and they would send 2 witnesses to come testify, and that's how they would know it was Rosh Chodesh. That's perfect Rosh Chodesh, right? Again, Rosh Chodesh Gemara. Thing is, Daf Yomi is amazing, right? It's good you came tonight for this. So, the rule is, Friday night, you look up at the sky, and you see the new moon, you got to testify. But it's a far walk. It's outside. You're only allowed to walk a certain distance on Shabbos, right? So you're allowed to walk outside the Tchum Shabbos. You're allowed to violate Shabbos in order to go to Beis Din in order to testify. Because Rosh Chodesh is important. So it overrules it. And so, what happens if a person sees the moon and it's bright in the sky and there are no clouds? So a person says, I don't have to go. Somebody else, I'm sure somebody closer saw it. Why do I have to go, right? So the answer is, Bein shenira be'olil, bein shelo nira be'olil. Shabbos. Does not matter whether you saw the moon and it's a bright, clear night, or it was not a bright, clear night. You go to Beis Din anyway. You're going to have to show up anyway. Rabbi Yossi says, if it's a clear night in Mechal Shabbos, you don't go, right? So therefore, Milo Amar Rabbi Yossi Hasam came into Efshar Lo Tarchinon. Is he not saying that since it's Shabbos, it's possible to get the Rosh Chodesh without them coming? So therefore, those guys should stay home. Isn't that what he's saying? So Hachanami, he would say the same thing here. When it comes to cutting the Omer, we'll do it with minimizing the malacha. Kevin to Afshar, since it's possible to cut 3 instead of 5. Lo tarchinan, we're not going to do the extra work. Mimai, who says it's the same thing? Dilma adla kan lo kamer Rabbi Yishmael hocha ela deleka nimtzeis ata machshilin la'asid lavo. He says it's different here by the Korban HaOmer. I'm not going to make a mistake in the future. If I cut 3 instead of 5, so I'll cut 3 instead of 5. It's not a big deal. But when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, what's going to happen if next time it's clear, and I say I don't have to go, maybe it's not even Shabbos. I'll just clear it out. You do have to go if it's not Shabbos. What if it's Shabbos, and I said I saw it, and I didn't go, but the next time it's cloudy, and it's Shabbos, and I also say I don't go? I can mess this up. The reason why the Chachamim say go no matter what, even if it's Shabbos, is to prevent a mistake. Right? So therefore, avohasam denimtes ata machshilin la'asid lavo. So he says, maybe so Rabbi Yishmael will say, look, when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, people could mess this up in the future. Therefore, I tell you, minimize the work when it comes to the Korban Omer, but don't go anyway when it comes to Rosh Chodesh. Right? Ema karabanisville may hold like the Rabbanan. Inami ad kan lo kam Rabbi Yossi hasam ela deleka tzorech gavoha. Or maybe Rabbi Yossi says, look, it's about Rosh Chodesh. It's not a service in the Beis HaMikdash, after all. So therefore, stay home. Better stay home. Don't b'chal Shabbos. It's not a service in the Beis HaMikdash. Lo nisna Shabbos lidachos. Avohacha. But here, we're talking about a service in the Beis HaMikdash. We're talking about the Korban HaOmer. So de'ikat tzorech gavoha. It's necessary for Hashem. V'nitna Shabbos lidachos. So therefore, Shabbos is pushed off. Ema karabanis v'lo. They might hold like Rabbanan. So therefore, the point is, none of these cases are similar. Even though they sound similar, we're not going to learn from one from the other. Itmar, it has been said. Shachat shtei chatos shel tzibur. You know what? Let's stop here. The next one's going to keep on going to the next thing. Yeah, it's a good place to stop right here.
Itmar, right?
Yeah.
Itmar.
Itmar.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.